In the fourth episode, the Fox family arrive at, the best way I can describe it is, a Mexican compound. It's a gorgeous house, but it's very heavily guarded. They get introduced to Chewy's contact, the guy that he called. His name's Enrique. But Allie gives Enrique a fake name. He says that his name's David Richardson, Margot's name is Mona, and the kids are Becca and Bobby. Charlie thinks the place is awesome, and it is a really nice house, but Margot's a little freaked out by all of the guns. Enrique is very hospitable, though, and says, "You guys are my guests, make yourself at home." Dina, though, asks him, "Where's Chewy?" And Enrique tells her that he's in a small medical facility they have there for migrants. He was in pretty bad shape, but he'll be okay, and they can probably see him in about a day. As they walk into the house, they then meet Enrique's son, Hugo, who appears to be around Margot's age, maybe a little bit younger, and he just could not care less about the Fox family's arrival. The housekeepers need to get rooms ready, so the Foxes all congregate in one room, and Allie is trying to make it like this is the coolest thing in the world, but Dina wants some answers. She says, "Dad, come on, what did you do?" So after a little bit of hemming and hawing, finally he sits Charlie and Dina down, and he starts to tell them why they're on the run, but then there's a knock at the door from the housekeeper who lets them know that their rooms are ready. It disrupts the story, and they all get split up. When Allie and Margot arrive in their bedrooms, Margot tells Allie that she's uncomfortable with the kids being surrounded by all these guns, and Allie brings up the point that a place this size is going to need the security force. He then says that there are more guns in America than there are in Mexico, which that's believable. But then he goes so far as to say there's more guns in Switzerland and France than there are in Mexico. And she doesn't exactly have the internet service to look this up, so she just takes it as word, but kind of seems like one of those guys who just says things very convincingly, and you kind of just believe it. Allie tells her, "We've been preparing the kids for this. We knew these days would come." But she says, "Honestly, I'm not sure I did." She then notices that there are armed guards right outside of their window, and she says, "I don't think they're patrolling to keep us safe. I think they're patrolling to keep an eye on us. We should really leave tomorrow." And Allie agrees. As they were having that conversation, though, Chewy got a visit from Enrique. And it becomes clear that Enrique is tied to the people that Chewy clearly owes money from, because they start talking about loyalty. Enrique is trying to make sense of why Chewy has come back. And Chewy says, "I want to come home." He starts talking about a she. She understands family, right? "Tell her I came home to see my daughter." And Enrique turns to Chewy and says, "You want me to appeal to her better nature when we both know she doesn't have one." So Chewy says, "Well, then tell her I brought her something to make good on what I did. It's the family." Well, not the wife and the kids. They're innocent. Let them go. But the husband, he's some kind of America's Most Wanted. Maybe she can use him and trade him with the government for something else that she wants. Look, that guy is an asshole. I would have killed him in the desert if I could, but I brought him here thinking that she could use him. You get the feeling that Enrique does feel for Chewy, and he's going to take this information back to whoever she is. The next morning, Charlie gets a knock at the door, and when he opens it up, it's Hugo, who tells him, "My dad told me I'm supposed to show you around and stuff." He then hands Charlie a change of clothes and says, "All right, come with me." And Charlie just decides to go. He doesn't tell his parents, though, or Dina. Dina also gets a change of clothes, although her change of clothes is so much better than Charlie's. It's a sweet, vintage Backstreet Boys t-shirt. And honestly, I don't think she appreciates it as much as she should. When Allie wakes up, though, he notices that the water pressure in the house is horrible. He starts walking around the grounds, and then eventually he finds a distillery that Enrique is working on. There's clearly a leak. He asks Enrique if there's anything he can do to help, but Enrique is insistent, no, you are my guest. He tells him that he can fix the water pressure because Enrique tells him that the water pressure issue has been going on for a few weeks, but Enrique is insistent, no, don't worry about it. Just you and your family enjoy the downtime. With Enrique insisting that Allie doesn't need to help, Allie then tells him, "Well, I'm thinking me and my family probably need to, push on. The problem is that we lost a lot of our resources." And Enrique says, "Then take anything you need." Allie tells him, "I don't want to accept charity." So Enrique says, "I'll tell you what. We'll find you a car, agree on a price. You can leave tomorrow." But Allie says, "We were thinking about actually pushing out today." And Enrique says, No. You can't leave today. We need to make sure we find you the right car, but most importantly, we actually have a very special dinner guest today. It's my aunt." While Allie and Enrique were talking, Dina ends up making her way over to Margot and says, "Hey, where's Dad?" And she says, "I think he's trying to wrangle us a car to get to Mexico City." And Dina asks, "When we get there, are we good? Are we safe?" And Margot says, "Yes." Margot then tells Dina, "I have to say goodbye to Chewy before we leave," and Dina and them both head to the infirmary. But when they go to say goodbye to Chewy, he's acting weird. He's very short with his answers. He barely looks them in the eye. And Margot gets the impression that something's not right. So when they leave the little makeshift hospital, she whispers to Dina, "Go find your brother while I find your dad. We need to leave ASAP." And she has to whisper it because they're surrounded by guys with guns. All of a sudden, though, they hear gunshots, and that's because Charlie's little excursion with Hugo started off in this hunting room with a bunch of dead animals that the family had killed and been stuffed. That then led to them looking at guns, where Charlie showed Hugo the gun that he found, and Hugo called it a piece of shit, but he cleaned it up for him. After cleaning the guns, they obviously wanted to try them out. So they were at this makeshift shooting range with some of the stuffed animals that no longer were in the showroom. Of course, Dina, Margot, they don't know that. So when they hear gunshots, it's pretty out of the ordinary. They start freaking out a little bit, wondering where Charlie is, but the guards are just escorting them into the house. They do the same thing with Allie, who has made his way down looking at the water pressure pipes. Guards end up finding him and escorting him back into the house. Allie, Dina, and Margot, though, are still separated, and Margot is pissed. When Enrique walks in, as cool as a cucumber, she freaks out at him saying, "Where is my son? I need to see him." And Enrique says that won't be possible. He plays it off like, your son Charlie's out there with Hugo. Hugo's safe. He knows gun safety. But Margot doesn't feel comfortable with Charlie out there playing with guns. Enrique, though, plays it off like, it's just boys being boys. Don't worry about it so much. Enrique then has Margot and Dina escorted back to the rooms where they meet back up with Allie, and they notice that the help has laid out a bunch of clothes for dinner, but they didn't lay out clothes for Charlie. So any fear that they had that something was going wrong just got confirmed. And Allie says they know that we won't leave without him, so they're making sure that he's not around so we can't leave. Margot then turns to Dina and says, "What did you tell Chewie about us? About your dad, about me? You were in the desert, you were talking to him. What did you say?" And Dina frantically says, "I didn't tell him anything because I don't know anything." And Margot tells both of them, "I saw it in his face. I think he made a deal for us. I'm not sure who he would have made a deal with, but I would call them the cartel. He doesn't use that word, though." Dina tries to put her mind at ease, saying, "Chewie's our friend. We dragged him out of the desert. He would have died in there." But Margot reminds her, Chewie never would have been in the desert in the first place if it wasn't for us. They then hear commotion outside, and when they look out the window, a caravan has arrived. And out of that car comes this woman that Chewie and Enrique were talking about. Allie starts looking around the room for anything that can help him in this situation, but then he realizes, wait, Chewie hates me, but he doesn't hate Dina. So he hands Dina a piece of paper and a pen and says, "You need to write Chewie a letter asking for help. He needs to feel like if he doesn't help you, you're gonna die, so make it good." And she does that. She writes the letter down and gives it to the help to deliver to Chewie. Now, the Fox family just gets dressed and waits to be called for dinner, hoping that Chewie can come through. But before Chewie could get the letter, he gets a visit from that mystery woman. When she walks in the room, Chewie has the fear of God in him. And at first she welcomes him back, but then she grabs a pair of scissors and says, "Stick out your tongue." And Chewie reluctantly does that. She puts the scissors to his tongue, and he's a snip away from not being able to talk for the rest of his life. She tells him, "You made an oath to me, and you didn't keep that oath. And I'm assuming that's why you've come home, asking for forgiveness?" And Chewie nods, and that's when she takes the scissors away and says, "Then earn it." And Chewie fills her in on who he's brought to her as a sort of payment. After the woman leaves to get ready for dinner, Chewie ends up getting Dina's message, and he's frustrated because everything that Allie said is right. He hates Allie, but he doesn't want Dina to die. And that's the picture that she paints if she doesn't get help from Chewie. The Fox family nervously heads to dinner, where Enrique is the first one to greet them. But then after they sit down, that's when this woman enters the room, and her name is Lucrecia. After talking about the relationship between Lucrecia and Enrique, the conversation somehow turns to Dina, with Lucrecia asking her, "Do you smoke marijuana? Do you do meth? Are you a virgin?" Finally, Margot steps in and says, "Yeah, we're not real comfortable with these questions." So Lucrecia starts asking Margot about what she does. And Margot answers the question saying that she taught high school English, but she's retired. But then she turns it on Lucrecia, asking, "What exactly do you do?" And Lucrecia says that she still runs a family business, a pharmaceutical medical supply company. And when Margot asks Enrique what he does, he says he's a surgeon, but he's retired. Margot then starts questioning Lucrecia about Hugo. And Lucrecia tells her that not only is Hugo her great-nephew, he's also her godson. Margot starts talking about the worry about being a mother, always thinking about the worst possible things that could happen to a kid. And Lucrecia says, "Well, Hugo's protected." And Margot says, "From what?" And Lucrecia responds, "From everything." Lucrecia then says, "You seem distracted. Are you guys worried about your son?" And Margot says, "Well, yeah, we think it's time for him to head back." And Lucrecia says, "He won't be back until I say so, if at all." Lucrecia then turns her attention to Allie, saying that somebody close to her is in a supermax penitentiary outside of Colorado. And if he is who Chewie believes he is, then maybe she can trade Allie for this person in the penitentiary. Enrique then cuts in and says, Chewie can't return to the United States, but he also can't live in Mexico without repaying the debt he owes to Lucretia. Allie looks at both of them and says, I can assure you that my family is worth nothing to you. He turns to Lucretia and says, a very long time ago, I used to work for the NSA. And let's just say we didn't see eye to eye. Are we done? And that's when Lucretia rings a bell and a bunch of soldiers run in, and she tells the soldiers, he can stay, take the women. And the soldiers start jacking up Margot, Dina, and Allie. But that's when one of the help receives a phone call from Chewie. Because as all of this was going on, Chewie and Hugo were out hunting in the middle of the property. But as they headed back, Chewie intercepted them at gunpoint. He hands Charlie the cell phone, calls the help, and tells the help, give this to Enrique immediately. And that's when Enrique sees what's on the other end of the FaceTime. It's Chewie, who has Hugo at gunpoint, threatening to blow his head off. Enrique shows it to Lucretia, and Chewie says, you guys were to kill me anyway. So, screw it. Let the gringos go. If you don't, I'm going to blow Hugo's brains out. And that's when Margot has probably the most badass line of the show. With her head pushed down on the table, she looks at Lucretia and says, he won't be back until I say so. If at all. Lucretia gives the order to let them go, and Margot tells her, you can do whatever you want to us. But Hugo's got an hour. And trust me, you can send all of these men to look for him and scour the area. But you're not going to find him. And you'll spend the rest of your life trying to find his body and wondering if he pissed his pants as he died. So Enrique and Lucretia give the order to let them go. Enrique escorts them out and is telling all of his men to stand down. Margot demands a gun and she starts shooting at the tires of the vehicle so they can't chase her. But right before she goes, she stares down Lucretia, who is viewing this from the balcony. Then the Fox family gets in a car and heads to pick up Charlie. They find Charlie and Chewie, who still have Hugo. And after telling Charlie to get in the car, Allie makes Hugo take off his shoes and then walk back. Then they head off. They get pretty far from the house and they pull over at a bus stop, and Allie tells Chewie, all right, you should be good from here. You got the money, right? But Chewie doesn't say anything. Allie offers him more money, and then finally Chewie gets tired of listening to Allie talk, turns the gun on him and says, all right, everybody out of the car, now. The family reluctantly does it, the whole time saying, Chewie, come on, man. And Allie tries to reason with him. He tells him, all right, you can keep the car, but take us to the next town. And he offers to pay him. But Chewie is done with Allie's crap. He gets out of the car and confronts Allie, saying, I'm taking the car because I have to find my daughter before they do. And Allie backs up with his hands in the air and says, okay, man. And Chewie freaks out at him even more, saying, oh, it's okay with you? It's okay that I take the car and I go find my daughter? And it just seems like anything Allie says is pissing off Chewie even more. So when Chewie starts to walk back to the car, and Allie says, I just didn't know you had a daughter, Chewie turns around, pulls the gun on him again, and says, you didn't know because you didn't ask, because you didn't care, because who am I to you? He then starts giving him a speech about how he is an American piece of shit, how he's the worst part of America. It's in his nature. It's who Allie is. While he's giving this speech, Charlie is conflicted about what to do. He still has his gun in his back waist, but he's kind of scared. He never ends up pulling it on Chewie. And Chewie demands that Allie look him in the eye, but then he notices that Allie has pissed himself, which is nothing to be embarrassed about. Don't take my word for it. Here's third grader Billy Madison.
Of course I peed my pants. Everybody my age pees their pants. It's the coolest.
Even though Billy Madison thinks it's cool, Chewie just thinks he's pathetic. So he turns around, gets in the car, and leaves. And the Fox family is left to sit at that bus stop. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.